Hello Math Nerds, it's Kitty Morgan. This is video 8 on the unit circle. So now we're going to really start answering some questions, some trigonometric questions using the unit circle. Okay? Alright, so let's talk a little bit about what we did in the last video. We found out that the x and y coordinates that we found really were the cosine and sine of the angle. And that was true because the hypotenuse is 1 on the unit circle. So how do I find the cosine and sine of the angles that are around the special angles, that are around the unit circle? All right, so let's talk about cosine of pi thirds. So first of all, I've got to figure out who pi thirds goes with. And so I normally do just a quick sketch like this. And pi thirds is kind of up there. And that's kind of how I think about it. That's where it is. So remember that pi thirds goes with 60 degrees. The 3 and the 6 are opposite in my head. That's kind of how I remember that. So pi thirds does not go with 30. Does not. Goes with 60. So I know that cosine is the x movement. So I'm thinking to myself, I'm thinking x. Because cosine is the x and sine is the y. So if I want the cosine of pi thirds, I want the x coordinate of that point on the circle. So I think to myself, go over a little and up a lot, right? And I really don't need the up or down part because this is cosine. I need the over part. And so I'm going to think about it again, go over a little. So remember the values we talked about earlier, the only values that we're ever going to answer in the unit circle? And those are 1, 1/2, root 2 over 2, root 3 over 2, and 1. Those are the only values that we can answer if you are a special person on the unit circle. So, who is go over a little bit? Well, that's 1/2. So my answer is 1/2. Ta-da! That's it. So what's really neat is that we talked about that all of the radian measures, that's the pi people, not the degree people, it's pi people. All the radian measures that have a denominator of 3 go with that same triangle of that 60 degrees. And we've already talked about that in the videos before. So what that means to me is that if they all come from the same triangle, they all have the same x value. So I know the number part of all these answers are 1/2, the number part. My job is then to figure out, to get to that point on the circle, do I go right or do I go left? Because if you go right to get to it, I'm going to point that if you go right to get to it, then your cosine's positive. If you have to go left to go to it, then your cosine is negative. Okay? So I've got to figure out where 5 pi third is located on the unit circle. So I'm thinking to myself, 5 is almost twice of 3. And remember in one of the videos we talked about if you're going around the circle, but right before you get, this is 2 pi, 0 and 2 pi. Right before you get to 2 pi, those are the radian measures where the numerator will be 1 less than what makes it 2. And so 3 times 2 is 6, minus 1 is 5. So 5 pi thirds, and I'm going to do this. I'm going to write number 2 right there. Number 2 is right there. This is number 1. And I'll just do this. And I'll put a 2 right there. That's where number 2 is located. So to get there, I go right 1 and down. And I don't really care about the down because I'm talking about cosine. So I'm putting a plus here for emphasis. You normally don't put a plus there because it's known to be a positive number if there's not a sign. All right, 2 pi thirds. Well, 2 pi thirds, 2/3 is almost a 1. So this is the pi thirds that is in the second quadrant. And so to get there, always start at 0. You go left and up. And remember, I don't really care about up because I'm doing cosine, which is left and right. So if you go left, then the sign that goes with this value is negative. So all of the pi thirds, that was my air quotes, all of the pi thirds have the same numerical value because they all have the same triangle and they have the same length. but where they're located in relationship to the origin tells you if it's positive or negative. So we've got one more third guy, and I bet you can guess where this is going to be because there's only one quadrant we haven't gone to, but let's see if it makes sense. So 4 pi over 3, let's think about 4 thirds. 4 thirds is just a little over pi. And you know, pi is over here, so a little over would make it in this quadrant. And so to get to that point, you go left. I'm done. There we go, left. So all of the pi thirds have the same number, length, value of the triangle. It's the length of the triangle, but you got to figure out where those are located to give it the right positive or negative. So I'm going to work through 5 through 12, and I'm going to draw some pictures that I draw for myself that helps me. And it's kind of how I think. And so I call these quick draws. And so they help me locate my little fella. All right, so I'm just going to draw it right here, and I just draw a circle, and I go, okay, 3 pi fourths. 3 is just a little less than 4. So that is almost a pi. So that's right there. And I want to deal with sine, and sine is the y value. Well, I remember that all of the fourths are the 45, 45, 90 triangles. And so their sine and cosine are the same because their x and y value are the same because the lengths of their legs are the same. So I know that it's root 2 over 2 because that's the guy in the middle. Like, you know, like when we came up here, we said you go out a little bit and go up, whatever. This is go out the same as you go up. And it's in the middle of those two. So it's the middle number. And again, if we go back up here and look, that's your, move that down a little bit, sorry. That's your small, that's your large, your big, that's a big movement, and that's your middle guy. Okay? All right, so here we go. I know it's root 2 over 2, but is it positive or negative? To get to sine, you go left, but that's not what sine is. Sine is the y value. And so sine is going up from there. I go left, but I don't care about that right now, up. So that is a positive root 2 over 2. Again, you don't really have to write the positive. I'm doing it for emphasis so you know that I'm really looking for that. Cosine of 5 pi 6. Okay, so where is that? 5 is 1 less than 6, so it's almost a pi. So it's right there. There's that triangle. That's a small, see how small your triangle is? That's your 30-degree triangle. Okay? Now, and that's goes with pi 6. Remember how we said 6 and 3? They have to kind of go together. So 5 pi 6 is a 30-degree triangle. And we know that we walk out a lot. I walk out a lot. Remember, cosine's x, walking right and left. I walk out a lot. And I wrote down root 3 over 2 because that's a big number. And because I went left, that's a negative. All right, sine of 3 pi halves. Where is that? That's not in a 4, 6, or 3. That means that's a quadrantal. And that's the guy down there. So to get there, I don't go left or right, but I don't want that. I want y's. I want the y value. How do I move yly to get there? So if you start in the middle, you don't move left or right, but I don't care about that, but I go down 1. So down 1. Anytime you go down, it's negative for sine. So up for sine is positive, down for sine is negative. Here we go for 7 pi fourths. So 2 times 4 is 8, minus 1 is 7. That means we're in this quadrant right in the middle. So remember, the fourths go with the 45, 45, 90, and that's where the lengths are the same, and that's the value in the middle. So I know that part of my answer is root 2 over 2. The thing I have to do now is decide, is that positive or negative? So I need to know the x movement. Is it left or right? Start in the middle, I go right and down. So that means that's a positive root 2 over 2. Going right means it's positive. Okay, I know. Remember, I'm doing it for emphasis. All right, cosine of pi over 2. My circles are getting smaller. Well, it doesn't end in a 3, 4, 6, so that's one of our quadrantals, and that's up here. That's that top one. And so I'm going to start here and ask myself, from this origin, from the center of the circle, do I go left or right to get to that point? And I do not. I do not. So that's why the cosine is 0. Remember, this is the point 0, 1, and I want the x-coordinate of that point. All right, 7 pi 6. Woo, let's make a bigger circle for me. All right, 7 over 6. That means that's a little over 1. Remember, pi is there. 1 pi is there. So 7 pi 6 is going to be right there. A little slice bigger than pi. And that is go over a lot and down a little. I don't care about the a lot there. That's the down part because we're dealing with sine, which is y. Over a lot, down a little. I know the answer, part of it is 1/2. That's the side of that triangle. And then I got to decide at sine, do I go up or down? And I go down to get to that point, and that's negative. We doing okay? I hope so. Boy, I tell you, if you'll learn this like this, it sure does make it easier. A lot of people try to just memorize the whole circle. I'm like, I can't do that. That's too hard for me. Let me have a pattern. All right, so 7 pi 4ths. Again, 4 times 2 is 8, minus 1 is 7. That must mean I'm right here. That's a 4. The 4s indicate the 45, 45, 90 triangle. That's the guy in the middle. I know that part of the answer is root 2 over 2 because that's the side of the 45, 45, 90. Now I've got to decide, is it positive or negative? I'm looking at the y's. How do I know that? Sine and y go together. And so I go right, I don't care about that for this answer, and then down. So that's negative. And one more and we're done for this video. So here's 11 pi 6. I guess I decided to stay in that last quadrant, right? 6 times 2 is 12, minus 1 is 11. There's your little pi 6 there. So I know walk out a lot, walk out a lot. Remember, that's your x, left or right. I went right a lot. A lot means root 3 over 2. And I went right, so that's positive. Okay, hope that's helped. So really all you have to do is walk around the circle. If you walk out a lot and it's cosine, it's root 3 over 2. If you walk out kind of in the middle of the circle, it's root 2 over 2. If you walk out just a little, it's 1/2. And then kind of the same thinking goes with sine, except it's up and down. It's the y. So I hope that helps. The next time we'll talk about what happens when tangent comes to town.